experience. I was born in New York and raised in Los Angeles, and I used to go back and forth until about 14 when I saw The Outsiders, and I thought I kind of like that Matt Dillon character a little too much, and I don't need to go back to New York anymore. I'm going to get it to go in LA. And man, I remember first seeing your name on the back of a Suicidal Tendencies record. Man. Wow. It was the first punk album I ever bought, and I kept seeing his name just popping up. And man, here we are.
And that was years after I started.
It was.
But that was the point. That was your entry point.
That was my entry point.
That's good. That's a good place.
Now I know more about you than probably you know, and we're going to explain to them all of that as well.
All right.
But knowing you and knowing that you got into this from photography and skateboarding at 14, tell us how that came about. I mean, at 14, most kids are not picking up a 35 millimeter camera, knowing how to use said camera, and then being not only know where those places are, where the people are doing what they're doing, which is skating, and such a smaller scene then, but being accepted and being, you know.
I'm going to try and not nerd out too much. I mean, if people want more details, I can give it. But the quicker version of it is that I took photography 1 at Paul Revere Junior High School in West Los Angeles, which was one of the main spots for skateboarding. If you look at videos from the 60s, there's guys skating on the embanked schoolyards at Paul Revere Junior High School. And in the lunch area, right, I actually went to school there. And that's where I took photography 1. I got a D. 6 months later, I took my first picture that was published. Okay? I took the photography class with a pocket camera. There's one in the case over there, you guys can see it. It's a little plastic piece of junk. It's what we used before these things when you wanted to get something that you could put in your pocket. But when I was in photography, I listened. I learned what the cameras did and how they did it. I didn't have a 35 millimeter camera. I thought it was just unnecessary at the time. I didn't think it just made a difference. Eventually I learned that it did. The photos I was taking pictures with a pocket Instamatic, and at 13 and 14, I was sending them to skateboard manufacturers because I was hanging out with a crew of guys that became world famous. And I knew what I was seeing as a 13 and 14-year-old, and even younger. I started skating. The first year I moved to California, like Danny, I started on the East Coast. I moved there. My mom, dad separated. I moved to California. My first gift I got was a skateboard. I was 10 years old. Had clay wheels, an old hard Hobie. You know, clay doesn't roll very easily, but those guys, the best, could still make them do things. Anyways, what was going on in front of me was incredible. And I was witnessing this, and I was a skater. This was my life. And I see these things happening that I just felt like it had to be shared. And this is where the photography started. Things that inspired me, I wanted to share that inspiration with other people. That's the beginning, that's the end. That's all I fucking wanted to do, was turn people on to what I was seeing. It kicked my ass so hard, I needed to do the same thing to other people. And it was a revolutionary spirit. It was a cultural spirit. It was something that I always felt would make the world a better place, open people's minds, teach people about good things. And so one day I found a pool. I'm wondering if that shot is on the wall. I found a pool. Well, there's many pools up there, but there's one in particular. But I found a pool that someone at school talked about, and we went in there, and you know, they were doing construction in the house, and you're not supposed to be there, but there was an empty pool, and we snuck in. But I found this pool, and back then, if you find a pool, you're the king for the day, at least. You're the guy, and you know, I'm not the best skater at all, but I got Jay Adams, who I was friendly with, and Paul Constantino, both original Z-Boys, both just a few months past that at this point. Jay riding a Logan, Paul riding underneath Stacy Peralta, and let's go to this pool. I'm gonna take pictures, and I'm gonna borrow a real fucking camera today. And I borrowed a camera from a neighbor down the street, and I got a roll of black and white film and a roll of color film, and I shot some photos that day, and they came out pretty good. I was 14, and I showed them to Stacy Peralta and Craig Stesick, who I didn't know who he was at the time, and they said, "Hey Glenner, these are pretty good. You should send them down to the mag." And I never thought of submitting directly to the magazine itself. I would always send to the manufacturers pictures of Tony Alva riding Road Rider wheels. They were a brand new wheel. They changed the sport. They were the first precision bearing wheel. Precision meaning a closed bearing as opposed to the loose ball bearings that we used to have to put in 8 on each side and build our skateboards that way. And I would send pictures around, and again, just a little kid, I'm getting these addresses out of magazines and just sending them, and I had some of these photos still with my 12-year-old writing, 13-year-old writing on the back. It's pretty funny. But after Stesic and Stacy told me I should send them to Warren Bolster, I called up the magazine in San Diego from Los Angeles. It's a 10 cents a minute call back in 1976. And I lowered my voice and I said, I have these pictures. I want to send them to you. But back then, there's no digital fucking file. I'm sending the film itself. I'm sending my slides. There's no copies. I've got these pictures of Jay Adams. You've heard who he is. I've got the pictures, but you can't lose them. And the guy on the other end promised me he would send them back if they didn't use them or if they did. I said, okay. I don't remember how I got them down there. There was no FedEx yet. It might have been regular mail. Once I remember later that he had me put photos on a bus to get down there. That's how you got stuff to somewhere quickly. You go to the Greyhound station, they get a bus and send them down there the same day. You could send a package anyway. So anyways, I got some good photos. Those guys told me I knew they were good. I thought they were great. I was impressed. I couldn't believe I did. The only bad thing about them is that my own shadow was in too many of them, or my foot was in the foreground of 1 or 2 of them. If you look at Fuck You Heroes, the first picture in the book of Jay Adams, my foot, I'm wearing Vans, is in the corner of the photo. In the photo that's in the show where you see Jay coming up, PC in the bottom of the pool, you see my shadow. No, that one is later. That's about, and by the way, back then, a day was a week was a month was a year. So much stuff is happening so quickly. Things are changing so much. I mean, it's hard to explain unless you live through it. And that happened to me with punk rock and hip hop as well. These are the golden eras, right? And I could say that in a way like, oh, I've lived through it all and I've seen it and that's my opinion. And everyone could have their own opinion. I don't give a fuck, I have mine. It's okay. But the pictures speak for themselves. And like I said at the beginning, I was inspired by all these subjects. I'm not a documentarian. I don't consider myself that at all. I shot the things that inspired me to inspire other people. I felt, not to be pretentious, but I feel as though I'm an artist who is doing it in the truest sense of the word. I'm composing images, making them look as beautiful as I can, even if they're ugly subjects, to make them look cool, exciting, intense, and perfect compositions whenever I could. My mom was a designer. I learned from her. I've been around art my whole life. This stuff was very serious to me. It's dead fucking serious to me still. Those books that I put out, the most recent ones, Bad Brains, Minor Threat, Black Flag, I didn't want to do those books. My good friends, Ian Mackay and Zach De La Rocha, convinced me that people need to see these photos, Glenn. They might not be your favorites. They might not be the ones that you think tell the story perfectly of that day, but they are a part of history and you should release them. And so I have. So I've been pushing that way. But if you look at like the pictures in Fuck You Heroes or the My Rules book, it's like, these are the best of the best. That's my edit. That's what I like to do. I'm really particular and serious about this stuff. So anyways, Danny asked me one question. I went way overboard.
No, I love it. It's not easy. I was sweating it. I mean, this is not my forte.
And I don't know if I answered. Did I answer his question?
You did.
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay. If I don't, just raise your hand and say, you forgot something.
All right. So at 14, again, you were living it. But what did you see that you think that the older photographers were missing?
I was a skater, and I was getting pushed around just because I was a little guy from the nice neighborhood. And most of these guys came from Venice or the south side of Santa Monica, and I lived up in Brentwood. So they would harass me, but I was skating there every day. I actually went to Paul Revere Junior High School. I went to Kenter Canyon Elementary School. Those guys came up to skate our schools. I lived there. So when the police would come and try and kick everyone out, I knew neighbors in the neighborhood where we could hide in their backyard when the cops came. So I earned some credibility from that, and I was a local skater there. I skated. That's why I had the pocket camera in my back pocket. I didn't want to carry a camera and be a nerd. Never in my life did I carry a camera around my neck, except for when I broke my arm. And when I went to shows throughout the years, anyone who knows me, I have friends who are in bands. I would never take pictures of bands because I didn't like their band. Unless they really begged me and they really needed to, and I thought something needed to be done. But I only took pictures when I felt it was necessary and when I felt my responsibility to share something that was really, really important, right? Look at that picture of Henry. That's one of my favorite pictures of Black Flag. And you see everyone but the drummer in the picture. You see the guitar player, Eric B. and Rakim right there. You know,
Yeah.
I'm proud of some of these photos, I have to say. I'm really happy I made them. I fucking think they're great. They inspire me still when I see them, you know. So when people come to these shows and we get to do this talk and people do this look, I told someone earlier in the day, you know, you don't have to know what my face looks like. I don't want you to, in fact. I like it when you know the photos. That's all I care about. And just in this news, the way society is now, it's a cult of personality. People want to see the people that do it. Okay, I'm here. But it's the fucking photos that do the talking and that really are supposed to continue to inspire people and younger people, not just all of us in here over 40, 50, or 60. You know, it's supposed to continue to share this legacy of a time when there was some pure heart involved. You know, it's about the heart and it's about the integrity, right? Because if it doesn't have that, it's worthless.
Right.
Next question.
Okay, so out of all the brilliant shots, skateboarding wise, tell us about some of the ones you missed.
Skateboarding wise,
Uh-huh.
That's a good question. I can't pinpoint a specific skate one, but you know, I never got to go to the Arizona Pipes, right? Which was these big Amaron. It was their Arizona River project, and they were bringing water from Colorado, I believe, to Arizona because it was dry, and to California, and they had these humongous pipes. And I was too young. I didn't even drive yet. I mean, Tony Alva would come and pick me up. We would go to a pool, or I would ride my skateboard or take a bus to go to where we were going during this time of these skate things where you'd ask someone for a ride. I never got to go to the pipes. I regret. That's unfortunate because they're so fucking photogenic. I mean, you almost just go out there with a camera and you're going to get something pretty cool. But I think if I was there, I might have gotten something different because because I'm a skater myself. Most of the photographers skated a little bit, but I was right there in it, right? I was right there in it, and I think that's why my early stuff has a perspective that it does. But I'd say, you know, and there were a lot of photos I missed over the years of particular bands that I could have shot, that I would have shot, and very often I wanted to see a band first before I would shoot them, unless I heard their records and it was just something really, you know, next level. But back then, it's like, you don't really hear the records. You know, it was very hard to get independent records. You all know. You know, you would go to a record store and someone would get it and a friend would send you a cassette or something like that. Oh, that's the picture I was talking about. See my shadow right there? My big there? That was my first roll of black and white 35mm film I ever shot.
Wow.
From that day, got my first published photo. And we have the magazine in the case over there. And like most very often happens, Danny, you would like this story. That picture, I was fucking pissed that they ran it. Like, okay, first of all, I get a tear sheet in the mail. I'm 14 years old, and and I'm looking on the page, and there's like all these little postage stamp pictures, and I'm figuring that's gonna be one of mine. And then I turn it over, and it's the whole fucking page. It's my photo. I was like, oh my God, and my name is on the bottom. I got a photo credit, and it's a subscription ad, which, like, I was told is like the next most important photo in the whole magazine after the cover, because they're trying to sell subscriptions. So my first published photo was a subscription ad, but it was the wrong shot. The guy's bailing. Jay Adams was flying off of his board. But the editor, Warren Bolster, a genius at the time, the godfather of all the skateboarding photographers, brought the surfing fisheye lens to skateboarding. And what I learned as a young man is that I use a fisheye a lot, but I don't use it as a gimmick. I don't use it as a novelty like people do. With the fisheye, you can get as close to the action and intensity as possible, and to the point where I got hit sometimes. But you're close, but you also see the environment. You know? And that's when you can get that intensity without making it look too distorted and too crazy, but you see the environment and you get close to the subject. That's what we're trying to do. And Warren Bolster brought us that. So, but what back to the story, Warren saw is that Jay Adams is flying out of the pool, and we have never seen anybody go above the coping before. No one's ever seen that. We're going to print this as a subscription ad because it's going to inspire kids. And that's what it did. I was bummed because the guy was falling. The other story is, we'll skip around a little bit, was Public Enemy's the greatest hip hop album of all time. It Takes a Nation of Millions. At the time, album covers for hip hop were going to cassettes. 90% of sales were cassettes. I had this beautifully composed image of Chuck and Flavor in the cell. It's in the My Rules book. Another version of it is in the Idealist book. nice perfect composition that the artist wanted to see. There's a shot on there where Flavor's leaning to the wrong side. It's not as good, you can't see Chuck's eyes. Hank Shockley, Bomb Squad, says, Glenn, this is the cover. I said, you can't put this on the fucking cover. This is the wrong shot. This is a leftover. This is a bad shot. Well, on a cassette, you saw one more bar of the jail cell. And they had to make it clear that they were in jail. Not just 3 bars in the beautiful shot that you see in my books, but it showed 4 bars on the little fucking 3x3 inch cassette. I was like, I'm gonna scratch the fucking negative. You can't use that shot. This is not my shot. This is a bad photo. And they said, Glenn, if you scratch it, we're gonna have to go with a graphic. And I knew that. I was there when they were recording. That album was the greatest hip hop album then. It's the greatest hip hop album now of all time. It's not my favorite cover. You just heard that story. But I'm very proud to be on it. And the whole story is told on the back with the video that I shot and everything else. But you could see the better shot in the books. And talking about shots that we missed or shots that we took that the right one didn't get used. You know, in punk rock, there were a lot of shows that you miss, you run out of film. Okay, I'll tell you one punk rock story that we missed, that we fucked up on. Very early in my shooting of shows, I was at a nightclub one night, and I was shooting pictures of this band called the Rock Cats. This is like 1980. I'm in high school still, and I'm just beginning to shoot bands. The first band I shot was the Stimulators. But and that's because I met the drummer. He was 12 years old, and he was banging up into my stomach while he was pogoing at a Buzzcock show. And I got a flyer from him, and he was playing in their band, the Stimulators. This is Harley Flanagan, who later became a member of the Cro-Mags. Harley's pictures in the show, I think, or in the book. You know, he's this big. And anyways, so I took pictures of Stimulators, and then I brought my camera for some reason to see the Rock Cats, which were like a rockabilly act, and it was in a nightclub in New York, and I'm taking a couple pictures of them. And they're like a group at the moment that people like. David Bowie is in the back. Phil Lynott jumps up on stage. Iggy Pop jumps up on stage. Johnny Thunders jumps up on stage. All these people are on stage with the Rockettes playing. And I just start fucking shooting. And I'm bringing the cameras. No digital, you all know, you look old enough in here to know. We're all using film. A couple of younger people in here. And I'm taking these photos as quick as I can, because this is a crazy all-star lineup. I never got this close to a band besides the Stimulators before. The only other time I took pictures of a band, I was in the 12th row, and it was Ted Nugent on stage at the Nassau Coliseum. And I got a good fucking picture there too, because he was the man back then. Not the fucking insane idiot he is now. But he was my man back then. All skateboarders loved his music back then. He was... Because before punk rock, he was the loudest, the fastest, and had the fucking attitude. And he was sober, by the way. He never drank. I thought that was all very cool. But back to the nightclub, I'm shooting the pictures. I'm taking pictures, Danny. Because I never told these 3 stories in a row where the wrong shots happen. Fucking Iggy Pop takes his dick out on stage. Fucking just snapping away all the pictures. They're going wild. I mean, and Johnny Thunders and him on stage at the same time. Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy.
Of course.
Bowie's behind us watching. And I get to shot 37. Roll of 36. I get to 30. And the film didn't go through the camera. I got all the fucking pictures. And from that day on, I watched the spindle on the other side go as I'm moving the camera through. I shot a whole fucking roll of that night, and then luckily though, I caught it at some moment, and I got like 3 shots. I got 1 shot of Iggy, not with his pants off. I got 1 shot of Johnny Thunders, and you could see Phil Lynott behind him, I think. And I think it's in my Fuck You 2 book. Someone has one here. It's pretty rare. Yeah, so those are 3 shots from the 3 genres that I really missed. You know, another thing that probably would have been pretty cool is that I went to see the Nation Ulysses, because they took an all-girl band on tour with them that no one knew yet at the time, that helped break them. And I didn't bring my camera because I just wanted to see the show. But I probably should have shot, because it was Bikini Kill's first tour. And I probably should have shot Nation Ulysses, even though I shot the makeup. And Ian Savonius, one of my favorite people. In the makeup, I shot a mini hunt for that. But that night, it probably wouldn't have come out on the film, but the Nation of Ulysses, whose propaganda was better than their music. Their record covers were amazing. But these guys came out on stage with their shoes on fire. And for the first 3 songs, they were on fire and they were amazing. But I didn't have my camera. I just enjoyed the show, which usually I did. I really, really didn't take my camera to more than half the shows I went to. I didn't want to be the camera nerd, and when I did go, I had it in a little backpack and incognito, and that's how I would do it. It wasn't until the 90s, there was one band that my best friend's band, and I would see them all the time when they would come to New York, or whenever they were around. I saw them in London, but there came a point when Fugazi would play, and I'd be like, fuck, I missed so many good shots tonight. And there's no place to publish them. No one gives a shit about them. But there was so much incredible energy that I just had to keep shooting them. And that's why the first book that I did that was on one subject was on Fugazi. Because I really experimented with them a lot. Because they're my friends. And hip hop was kind of, the same way. There was a point where skateboarding started to go on a downturn. And the excitement level for me, it was getting too professional. People were wearing safety equipment. Backyard pools were getting the skate parks were getting closed, and then punk rock started coming up for me. They were crisscrossing, and so this hardcore punk rock started happening. But then after a while, by 1983, after I produced the Suicidal Tendencies album, something made me think that I could do that, because I was in the studio with Black Flag and the Circle Jerks and the Adolescents, and I started shooting covers. And no one cared about Suicidal. Just a little aside, but the singer of Suicidal Tendencies was the little brother of Jim Red Dog Muir, the Dogtown skateboarder on the original Z-Boy. We met at Santa Monica College, and Mike was known as a real fighter, a crazy lunatic, as he was suicidal, Mike. But he gave me his demo at school, knowing that I worked with all these bands, and I knew his older brother, who took care of me like a little brother, one of the nicest people I know, and I thought they were great. Everyone in LA hated them, except for their own crew, because they had a tremendously horrible reputation for destroying every place that they ever played. And I mean, their fans would go fucking berserk. They would tear apart every stage, be flying everywhere. Like nothing you've ever seen up to that point. The suicidal kids, and I don't mean kids who are willing to kill themselves. I mean kids who are fans of the Suicidal Tendencies. But I saw, and their music was a combination of that old heavy metal and punk rock, and I really liked them. But what made me go there with the Suicidal story, Danny? Do you remember what? I don't remember where I went. People, could anyone read?
Just how you got involved in that, and meeting them at college and all of that stuff. But let's go on. There is a connective tissue between punk and skateboarding, and I think it shares the same type of energy.
It's the attitude, absolutely, and a lot, and there's actually a lot of ideals there too. There's a revolutionary spirit in skateboarding, punk rock, and hip hop with the attitude, and so much more that was very important to me when I put out my first book, to portray that and show that these are actually all people who are really trying to do something here. And really, back then, I didn't know as much as I know now, 20 years later, when we really get to analyze it and how much deeper the roots are. But back then, it was really all about attitude. Look at Ice-T. You know him from LA.
I do.
It's one of the first times I ever shot him. That was for a big expose they were doing. The first time they were covering hip hop in a rock magazine in California called Bay Area Music. And they had a Los Angeles edition, they had a San Francisco edition, which was the mother of it. But in the LA edition, they wanted to put Ice-T, and they asked me, I had done all the Beastie Boys. That's one, this is also another one of my favorite photos I ever took. The Yo Bum Rush to show. That's like fucking Rembrandt to me. I love that shot. But the Black Flag photo before it is also one of my all-time favorites.
So let's touch on that. So were you going to the shows at that time? Because I know that was a thriving, the connection between skate and punk rock was just insane, whether even bands, like you said. So I came from New York and lived in that era. And anytime you would go to a punk show, you had to watch your back. And Suicidal Tendencies as a gang, the group that followed the group, was something that you'd had to keep your back against the walls. We formed other gangs to make sure that you would be okay in there. So there's a big correlation between that, as you know, and some people may not know that was they were the most feared if you went anywhere near that.
And that was exciting at first, and that's part of the reason I put all their hand-drawn T-shirts on the back cover of the record because I wanted people to see that this is a thing that people want to be a part of. But when I got to work with them, when I told Mike I would do it, and we got them a record deal, against everyone in LA hated us for getting them a record deal. But Lisa Fancher from Frontier Records, who put out the Circle Jerks' first album, the Adolescents' first album, the TSOL album. She did a lot of great stuff, Lisa Fancher. Woman record owner. I still am great friends with her to this day. She said that her and her boyfriend at the time, John Silva, who became a very famous manager, she supported him for many years. And in turn, the Suicidal Tendencies record that I made supported him for many years because that was the biggest selling record they had. But they used to call me Glen E Punk Rock because they were kind of moving away from that hardcore stuff. But they wanted an album, and I said, look, Lisa, I'll produce it, I'll do all the photography, I'll run the whole show. She says, okay. She liked the demo, she heard Institutionalized, we did a demo for it with Spot, and then we went to her, Spot, Black Flag's producer. But when I started working with Mike and them, and Mike we were like best friends at the time, I said, we really this gang shit has gotta stop. Because I can't be helping you and you guys are still fighting and beating up people. That's not working. And he said that they would. But some people. And after the album became very successful, a year later, they went back to their old ways and I had to split off. And then what happened 6 months later, the Beastie Boys come to town opening for Madonna. I like this hip hop stuff. I've always liked it. And these kids I know from Brooklyn, never been to LA. They come to LA opening for Madonna. I drive them all around town. I will not take them to the Galleria because I am from the West Side and I will not take them to the Valley.
I knew you were going to touch on that if you
did. And that's what they wanted to do because they loved Fast Times at Ridgemont High. But I did take them to KXLU.
I know.
And in that Together Forever book, we did some great, I was so inspired. I was at UCLA and I had stopped managing Suicidal and it was kind of deflating. I had made these guys, I got them on MTV, that video, that we produced for $5,000 for Institutionalized. I did a lot of stuff, but it was the great rock and roll swindle to me. If you've seen the Sex Pistols movie, you understand the story I'm talking about. And I just got a little more into school, but then the Beastie Boys came through and we had it. Those guys they would make me laugh so much. Like Chris Rock says he wrote the introduction to my Together Forever book. Says if the Beastie Boys grew up on the other side of the street, they would have been comedians. Because those guys are so fucking funny, they always were. And you could see it. If you watch their special on Apple, they have an incredible sense of humor. But we shot these photos and we took them all around town. We had the best time together, and all those photos, when we sent them back to Def Jam, they wanted me to get a photo of them with Madonna. The publicity at Def Jam wanted that. It wasn't even on a major label yet. And Madonna wouldn't pose with the Beastie Boys yet. When we went to soundcheck and I saw Madonna soundchecking, and I couldn't imagine that was her, because we saw her on MTV and she looked good. At soundcheck, I said, is that her overweight sister? I didn't know who it was. I didn't say that to her face. I just said, that's not her. Anyway, when we met backstage and we said and the publicist needed us to get a photo, she said, well, why do you want to get a photo with me and them? I said, because I want them to be famous like you. She didn't take that well. And so we ended up having to shoot a picture of them in front of a poster of her that was up at the venue. And then we went in the audience and took pictures of Beastie Boys like this with her performing behind them. And that's also in the Together Forever book. You can see all those shots. It's pretty fucking funny, I think. And but after that punk rock experience, managing the band and seeing how we did get them to a place that no hardcore punk band had ever been before, on MTV, the first one and all that stuff. And the success got to, just typical rock and roll story. I don't have to defame people. People could see and they know what happens. And so, but the Beastie Boys coming through and me doing this session where I hadn't shot anyone for a while, And it went back to New York, and we didn't get the shot with Madonna, but we took all those other pictures of them on the Lincoln that they had rented, standing on the back of the car. I took them up to Malibu, and I took them up to the KXLU to do a radio show interview. If you look that up on the internet, you could just see how ridiculously stupid and funny these guys were. And this is before they even had an album out. It's on Adam Baum's show. You remember that KXLU? And all these and all those photos. When Rick Rubin and Russell saw them, Rick to this day says it's his favorite photo session he's ever seen. And that was the beginning of my relationship with Def Jam. And then whenever I was still in UCLA, but when groups would come out to California, I would drive them around and help them out and help promote their shows in Los Angeles. And then eventually I would shoot someone like Run DMC, and they're like, we don't want anyone else to shoot us but Glen. We like hanging out with Glen. Glen is into this music. He's not just a fucking photographer. He's part of the culture. And that led them to bringing me to New York to shoot their first ever tour book and the publicity and merchandise for all that stuff. And you see, and again, that's in the Together Forever book. And I'm not trying to promote that book, but we're talking about these things so much. And we had that time in Hollis. But Run DMC got so big, of course, I couldn't be the only one. But for a while, they were trying to make it so like no one else would shoot them because they knew they would get good stuff. But they were too big, and that just wouldn't work. But I went to Hollis, and from that point on, it was like I was coming back to New York all the time. And then all of a sudden, at school, I had taken every class I could at UCLA. 6 years in, still not graduating, on academic probation. Political science major at that time, I think, or political philosophy was one of the last classes I was taking, and there was no classes left for me to take at night school because inferential statistics got me to night school because I couldn't pass that even with the nicest tutor. So I had a whole year off, and then Rick and Russ were like, "You should just move back to New York," and I was like, "But I like LA, I think." But then I would be in New York, and I realized I really like the people in New York a lot more. And I grew up on the East Coast, and I was always much more aggro than the people in LA. Like I would work 2 days when everyone else would have to work 6 to get the same stuff done because I just had that energy. Maybe you could see that I still have that at this age. I get enthusiastic about stuff that I like. So I moved back to New York, and it was perfect. I haven't left since. That was 85. We just keep on going, and we shoot the things that inspire us to try and inspire other people. You never do it to try and make a living, but if you do what you love, sometimes you get lucky, and it gets to, I don't know how I do it. Every year, I keep going, and it keeps working. It's a lot of hustle. It's a lot of hard work. The books are just fun. They're there to promote the ideals of myself and my subjects and to inspire other people. And I love making the books. That's the thing that I love. It's just like a puzzle for me. So when you have your hobby, I love making the books. And that's just really fun. And I still take pictures every once in a while, but mostly I work off the archive, and we have these exhibitions. And let's hope Social Security's still around by the time I'm 65. Good luck. And then I just got 2 more years, so but yeah, it might not be here then.
And I have 2 more questions.
Okay, let's go.
I think arguably one of the greatest, and your work is incredible, obviously you know that, but the Minor Threat photo in front of the house has been the most iconic, photo in punk for me, and
a lot of people.
And I know it's a problem for Ian to get people because people always want to take photos on
people
the porch.
Come to his porch at least several times a week.
It's become a historical landmark.
Yeah, it is.
But
should be, yeah.
Something that I always noticed in you as a branding and marketing guy myself is that the artists trust you enough to you kind of like put 2 things together and presented it in a way that nobody else did. For example, when you had Public Enemy and Minor Threat shirts, or you had Fat Boys holding up a Powell Peralta skateboard, there was this really cool intersection of like the things you loved and turning them on. That's correct. One group into some, because growing up in that era, again, there's a couple of years difference, but you couldn't just walk through the mall with the Ramones shirt without getting punched in your face or somebody throwing something. I mean, if you were punk, you paid a real price for that. And if you were a white guy into hip hop, you paid a price for that. It was a badge of honor. And if you were, all of those things were subcultures, and they blend well at first, except for in certain areas like Venice, Santa Monica, places in New York. There was that kind of thing where like the Beasties came out of that. They came out of that punk rock thing down at, in CBGB's, the matinee shows. There was a lot of, but that was very small pockets, and the rest of the world did not look like that. So when I see something on Thrasher magazine or somebody, I see a picture, my mind was blown when I seen Chuck and Flavor in Minor Threat shirts. I mean, that was like, So could you speak to that?
Well, I worked for Thrasher skateboarding magazine after Skateboarder faded away, and Action Now faded away, and I got Jill Caniff, who was answering phones at Thrasher, who was later in the band Luscious Jackson. I said, let's review the Public Enemy album in Thrasher, and she wrote it for Thrasher. I got Black Flag in Action Now at Skateboarder magazine because it's that spreading everything. I mean, Dukowski gave me credit, and for spreading. I mean, Skateboarder had 1 million readers at one point. Not by that point; it was already on the downturn. But it wasn't like any other fanzine where Black Flag was covered, or any music magazine. The big rock magazines never covered any of this stuff ever, and I worked tirelessly to try and get them in these magazines, and it just didn't happen. I mean, and Black Flag was, they worked really hard at getting people to know them. I learned so much about publicity, just flyer campaigns, putting up posters all around the neighborhoods, passing them out at all the shows. I used to do it with them. I used to wheat paste with them. We'd have the glue in the back of the trunk of my Honda, and do it on Sunset and hopefully not get busted, But getting Chuck and Flavor for that photo, it's not a good photo of mine. It's an important photo though, because they were filming a show called The Cutting Edge for MTV that day, which was like an alternative. It was, show before the term alternative. Before this is, 4 years before Nirvana was made their record, and it was a show on MTV. It was before Matt Pinfield or these guys even on there. It was this Cutting Edge show, and it was the first time they were doing a little special on the Def Jam tour, 1987, hip hop. They knew me from when they interviewed the band Suicidal Tendencies. And so I was working with Def Jam. I was going to see that whole production crew at the Cutting Edge. And so I went down there and I told Chuck, who trusted me, as many artists do, because I'm in it like they are. I'm not a fucking outsider. I am part of the culture. It is part of me. And I said, Chuck, this show is made for this audience. These guys, Minor Threat, they have similar ideals. They promote the straight edge, no alcohol, no drugs. They got good things. It's a lot of integrity here. The band is no longer in existence. You got the Black Sheep, Public Enemy and the Black Sheep. Trust me. Chuck puts on the shirt. He wears it on the show. It's on this stupid, ugly set of a TV show, and I snap one photo of that just to have it with them. And as Chuck said, many times since, it showed ahead of time, that I put these cultures together that would speak to a lot of people. So everyone who didn't see it, we would put it in their face so they could understand it really easily. Like it just being, sometimes you got to spoon feed people.
That's right.
And I'm okay with that. And I don't want to be condescending, but
That's right.
it is what it is. You want to get your ideas across. You want people to understand that we should all be together in this stuff. Too much separation in this world, right? Look at how the Beastie Boys and Run DMC got together. The publisher asked me to make a Beastie Boys book. That's a money grab to me. And they did it with Spike Jonze afterwards. I wouldn't do it. I said, I'll do a Beastie Boys book if it could be the Beastie Boys and Run DMC together. Because without Run DMC, there is no Beastie Boys. And that's why I did Together Forever. All of my books are fucking political. If people tell me, who don't like my politics, far left, I don't give a fuck. If you like my photographs, you don't understand them if you don't understand that all my politics is that way, and that's what I'm trying to express in most of my work. Particularly, and so in that book, and they all have a political statement. So you have Together Forever, putting the races together. It's very simple. That doesn't seem like it shouldn't be a big political statement. In this political climate, it is even more of one, unfortunately, at this point in time in the world. But anyways, we put these things together to make statements. to enlighten people, to make people care about each other more, to people just have a better world, a more peaceful world, a more equitable world. And, you know, it might seem like just pretty pictures sometimes, but it's, or just, you know, oh, that's just a punk photo or whatever, but I'm telling you, that's the meaning behind it all for me. And that's why I'm fucking honored to be in this space at the Woody Guthrie Center, that they fucking invited me down here to do the first showing of the Burning Flags exhibition in fucking Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
All right. I think it's time we open up to the